Have you ever wondered why Ai Hoshino had starry eyes her whole life? Why Akane could mimic starry eyes? And why Aqua and Ruby were both born with just one star in their eyes? In this short, we'll break down the true meaning behind starry eyes, using clues from the manga such as dialogues and changes in characters' appearances. There will be spoilers, so you have been warned. For starters, we know that starry eyes aren't actually there. In fact, they're only meant to be seen by the reader or the audience. Although despite this, some characters can notice other attributes that coincide with starry eyes. But before I get into that, we have to talk about the significance of starry eyes. Though Oshinoko follows many themes, one of the most significant themes is lying. When it came to Ai, her motivation to become an idol was to create a lie so big that she'd eventually believe it. And though Ai's behavior would suggest otherwise, Ai was severely depressed during most of her life. This meant that becoming an idol was a coping mechanism for her early childhood abandonment, and as a way to convince herself that she was capable of feeling love. Though her stardom gave her a mechanism to hide her severe psychological distress, this didn't mean she was ever an open book about her depression, thus making her a liar from the start. When we saw her communicate to Ichigo Saito for the very first time, she spoke with a nonchalant attitude about her troubled past, as if she was hiding just how terrible she felt about it. She was candid, but put up the front that she wasn't suffering despite her circumstances. This explains why she had starry eyes since before becoming an idol. In essence then, the stars symbolize a life of pretending to be something they're not. So what about Ruby and Aqua? Why were they both born with one star each? Well, as we know, they are both reincarnations of Serena Tendoji and Goro Amimaya respectively. This meant that since birth, they both had to pretend they had no lives prior to becoming Ai's children. But since they were still being themselves for the most part, they did not develop dual stars until later in the story. But what events caused them to gain and lose stars in the first place? Let's start with Aqua. Aqua loses the star in his right eye the moment he embraces happiness in chapter 68 of the manga. This happens after he believes his father died after taking his own life. This sets Aqua free from his revenge plot and causes him to pursue acting out of pleasure, which allows him to live authentically, as opposed to using acting as a way to get closer to his father. Authenticity, then, caused him to lose the star in his eye. Aqua doesn't regain the star until chapter 98, where after breaking up with Akane, he decides to pursue his revenge plot all over again. What's interesting is that he gains 2 stars in his eyes as opposed to 1, symbolizing the fact he must set aside all authenticity to exact revenge on Hikaru Kamiki. The difference between his revenge plot when he only had 1 star in his eye versus when he had 2 was that after knowing who was responsible, Aqua was willing to forfeit all semblances of his true self to achieve his goal. This is evidenced by his willingness to oust Ruby and himself as Ai's children, in exchange for Kana Arima's tabloid story to be dropped, considering that leaking Ai's secret would have only contributed to his revenge plot. This means then, that Aqua's willingness to dishonor Ai's memory means a complete rejection of his own authenticity. Ruby, on the other hand, changed from being partially authentic to completely fake in chapter 79, after she resolved to avenge Goro and Ai's murder, thus giving her dual stars. What this entailed was her manipulating director Tetsuro Shibara from the show Dig Deep One Chance, as well as the assistant director and cosplayer Maya, as a means to advance her own career. It also caused her to have a Machiavellian attitude uncharacteristic of her normal self. Another character who was shown with starry eyes is Akane whenever she would mimic Ai's personality, either for Love Now or for her audition for Ai's biopic. Since she was able to deduce that Ai's appearance came from somebody with a murky past, as well as hiding a pregnancy, she was able to replicate the eyes to a T. This further adds credence to the idea that deception is linked with starry eyes. The last character known to have starry eyes is Hikaru Kamiki, Aqua and Ruby's biological father. We don't know much about him, other than the fact that his past in being abused at the age of 11 caused him severe psychological harm. We also know that he has a propensity to lure women into a sense of security before murdering them in several ways. This means then that he's always playing a character in order to lower everyone's guard, thus having a personality consistent with the starry eyes trope. Further evidence for starry eyes being synonymous for deception comes from director Toshiro Kendaichi in chapter 96, where he states that Akane's starry eyes are a trait some people have, stating that they are deceptive in and of themselves. He also states that Hikaru Kamiki also shares those same eyes. So though nobody sees literal stars in people's eyes, the characters can pick up on the gleam or characteristics surrounding them. Ultimately, Oshinoko's usage of starry eyes denotes a level of deception depending on whether both eyes or just one eye is bedazzled. And considering Oshinoko is a criticism of the entertainment industry, its overall lesson tells us to be wary of starry eyes, as in the world of show business, not everything is what it seems.